All right. Well, again, welcome everyone to our Career Connections with Lynne Williams, and she will speak about how to beat the ATS. And that seems to be the bane of our existence for all job seekers. So any tips that she can give, I'm sure will be highly appreciated, no matter who you are, or what walk of life or industry that you are in. A little bit about Lynne. I love Lynne. Okay, she's awesome, but she is one of the, if not the East Coast premier queen of career search. Just in case you didn't know, Lynne, I think you are. I have you on a pedestal, which is awesome. She is a candidate for her doctoral degree. So she's working on her doctoral degree right now. And among all of that, she's a mom, she's a grandma, she's working with job seekers. She has a career group. She's in charge of the BENG group, and she's combined them. She's doing a lot of things, which is pretty cool. And you can join her on all of these different sessions that she does offer, again, for free, because you know I'm a free girl, like free, right? To get lots of information about your job search, different aspects of job search. She runs LinkedIn. She runs all kinds of things. So definitely pay attention, take some notes, and I will give you the contact information for Lynne to follow up with her and maybe even join her group, because I still attend. It doesn't matter, you know, like you can always learn something, something's changing. All right.
Professional development.
Yes, professional development for sure. So, All right, take it away, Lynne. It's all yours.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm going to share my screen now. And just so you know, this is a Google slide deck, and it is interactive with lots of links built in. So therefore, when Christine shares this, unless you actually, type it up now in another window, hold on, it's loading. Give it a second here. Oh my, all right. So the bit.ly link, beating ATS, it is case sensitive, but this is what will be shared with you because there's lots of learning above and beyond what there is on the deck. So there's links to read articles and whatnot. All right. Let me move my little Zoom screen out of the way. And here we go. So today's learning objectives, I'm going to tell you some tips and best practices for applicant tracking systems. I'm going to show you how to analyze keywords from a job description one way, and also key titles, and give you some tips on how you can format your resume so that you can make it through the applicant tracking system. So the question is, what percentage of resumes are never seen by the human eye? Now, as a doctoral student, I actually have one course to complete my doctoral dissertation. It actually happens to be on the topic of LinkedIn for job seekers who are Gen X and boomers. So I do know how to cite things, but in this particular case, the answer to this, I have not cited, because it depends on what source you want to use to cite it. So looking at all the different sources on the internet, I came up with an average of plus or minus 72% are the number of resumes that go into the black hole, so to speak. And it's a lot of it is because of the way they're formatted. So as we go along, I'm going to invite you to put questions in the chat, and Christine will moderate the chat. But I want the questions to be on the slide deck at hand, because if you ask questions that are not related to what I'm talking about, it's quite possible that those questions will be answered in a future slide. So just bear with me. This is one of those topics where I just know it makes people's blood pressure rise, because once they realize some of these very vital tips, they realize they've been doing all this stuff all along that has been incorrect. So the good news is you're going to learn how to do things correctly so you can beat the applicant tracking system. So it's a new day, a fresh start, a new chapter in your book of job search. So here we go.
Are you monitoring my Fitbit? Do you know what my blood pressure already is? Because it's going up just talking about that.
No, I just know people get angry.
Yes.
Because it's don't shoot the messenger, don't shoot me. It's I'm just delivering the message. That's why I say, you know, I'm going to teach you some tips and tricks and best practices, and then you just put them in motion, and then that may change your course or trajectory. So the first thing is we need to talk about, well, what is an applicant tracking system? So it's really a database, and it helps the people in HR get your information into their database, and it could help them save time and resources, because there's only so many people in the human resources department. And, you know, remember in like, what was it, April 2020, there were like 40 million people that were unemployed. So there were no jobs. And now, you know, the tables have turned. There's lots of jobs, but people are not able to find the jobs. There's a broken system in there. Plus, there's the Great Resignation going on. I'm on LinkedIn Profinder, which notifies me when people want resumes. I can't tell you the hundreds of emails I get a day. I can't even keep up. It's to the point of ridiculous. There's so many people that want to make changes in their life. It's pretty crazy out there. But anyway, the ATS, it helps human resources save time and resources to get you into their database. So what happens is when you submit your resume online, it goes through a parser. And when it goes through the parser, it's going to analyze it for keywords. But it's not just keywords. It can actually read the words before it and after the keyword. So what that is called is contextualization. So what will happen is the bot, with the contextualization, with the keywords, it will analyze this whole thing and come up with a mathematical score as to how well your resume matches the applicant track or the job description.
So when you say score, you mean like you got like a 82% or like
Yes.
42% or okay.
Yes. Now here's the interesting thing, Christine, is you could have 1,200 people apply to one job. And if the HR person decides, oh my gosh, I can't go through 1,200 resumes, so I'm going to set some parameters on my ATS system. So what that means is they're going to say, all right, I want 90% and above matchy with the job description. Now this is not every single HR person is going to be doing this, but some may do this. So now that brings it down to 400. Well, I can't possibly go through 400. I'm now going to make it 95% and above. That brings it down to 100. Ooh, that's still a little bit too much. I'm going to make it 97% and above. That brought it down to 34 resumes. Oh, I can do that. So they may actually screen you out and with a better match by just setting parameters on the percentage of the match. And you never know whether somebody's going to do that or not. There are over 200 applicant tracking systems that exist. And you never know how people are going to treat things. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, my resume is not getting through the applicant tracking system. Well, there may be some throw out questions. So if they say 5 to 7 years of experience and you only have 3, and you answer that appropriately, do you have 5 to 7 years of experience? If you say no, all of a sudden you've actually disqualified yourself by that throw out question. So that's one example of where it'll get you right at the beginning. But the other thing is, a lot of times the bots can't read your resume because it's too highly formatted. Like if you go onto canva.com or, use some other template, because I'm not a fan of templates. But if you have a highly formatted resume, it's got all these different section breaks and colors and whatnot. And maybe the more sophisticated applicant tracking systems might be able to read some of them, but maybe they can't. But the less sophisticated ones, the little boys and girls in the market of ATS, they may not have the funds to ramp up their technology to read those. So I'm going to give you a whole bunch of tips on what you could do to format your resume.
Let me ask you, Lynn, I'm
Sure.
sorry. We have ATS and it's a fact of life, fact of job search, but so many people blame the black hole and the ATS for not getting through. But you're saying that recruiters are putting those different limits on it to make their job a little bit easier. So is it a recruiter's fault or the ATS's fault?
So it could be the job seeker's fault with how they format their resume.
Okay.
It could be the recruiter or hiring the HR department's fault by putting the parameters on.
Okay.
But you really have to have a base resume that is good, solid base resume, and you have to take that and you have to customize it for each and every job description. Therefore, you have to analyze the job description for the keywords and the key phrases, and you have to customize your resume for that particular job before you apply.
I feel like you just made me run a 5K. I'm tired already, and you haven't even gotten through all your slides.
I know. So you really need to take the time for quality resumes, not quantity. But even better yet is you need to be networking your way to your next job. Hopefully you've heard that somewhere between 43 to 80%, depending on which source you reference, of jobs are found via networking. So therefore, you need to network your way to the next job. However, if you're asked to submit your resume through the ATS system, if it's a big company, then at least you know how to make your resume customized so that there's logic there that it matches the skills, the requirements, as well as the keywords and key phrases. So let's talk about these key phrases. That's called contextualization. So if you have this word Java, that's a key word, but the words before Java and after Java are where the applicant tracking system will analyze and mathematically score. So if you have the word Java in the job description and it has words after it, would those exact words, could you weave that into your resume so that it's a matchy? We're not looking to plagiarize the whole job description, but if you can weave in the keywords and you can weave in the key phrases from the job description into your own resume, do you think that might help you with that mathematical score? I'm going to say yes, it probably would. So let's keep going.
A very good point there, Lynn. The before words, the afterwards, how much of it is matchy match on your resume compared to a job description? I've seen some recruiters, some people that are guiding job seekers where they take the entire job description, copy and paste it into the resume and put it in white. So it's
in
up
a
on the background,
font,
but yet it's not. And so is that still a thing? I know in the 80s, 90s it was, but maybe I don't know how much has changed.
That's actually, you are getting to a future slide, but I will answer
I'm
that
sorry.
right here. That's all right. I will answer that right here and right now. So a lot of people do take the job description and at the end of their resume, they will put it in white and they'll change it to a 1-point font, right? So it's like teeny, teeny, tiny.
Yep.
But guess what color it comes out on the other end? Black.
Wow. Wow.
So here we have a situation where you've got an HR recruiter and you got the balance, right? You got the scales. Well, which way is it going to tip? Either I think this person is shady because they did what they did. I can see what they did. I know this game. I know the trick. They don't have integrity. Or the other side of the scale could tip and say, wow, this person is pretty creative and figured out how to get through the system. So they had 100% match. You don't know what that person's going to be thinking. So I would urge you to have integrity and be cautious about not doing that, because I think it shows being sneaky and not having integrity and earning that ability to interview based upon your background, qualifications, skills, and whatnot in the match for the requirements.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So what do you need to do to optimize your resume? There's a whole bunch of ways, and we're going to talk about each of them. So you want to take your resume, your base resume, and go file save as ABC company, file save as XYZ company, whatever it may be. You want to customize that resume for your future forward. There's a lot of people out there who are doing the same thing they've always done, and they want to continue in that industry and in that position. But there are other people who want to reinvent themselves. They want to pivot. They want to get out of the industry that they were in. They want to make a change. Maybe they want to go from corporate to nonprofit. Maybe they want to go from nonprofit to corporate. You never know. So you just have to customize your resume for each and every job. Oops. My Netgear just, hold on. I lost my screen because my internet reset here. Bear with me a minute. Now that's not happened to me before. We're totally quit. All right. I'm going to share the screen again. You can hear me, yes?
I can hear you.
Oh, good.
Just
All
can't see
right.
your slides, but I can hear you.
All right. The slides are coming back. Just give me a second. I gotta. Here we go. All right.
If we're copying and pasting our, the keyword, the forward, the afterword, that kind of thing into our bullets on our resume, is it the same as copying and pasting the entire job description? Is it perceived on that end the same way?
No, because you have already written your resume out. So it's a matter of taking little snippets and weaving it in, your wordsmithing. And it just so happens to match. You're not plagiarizing the whole resume, but you are flipping out your keywords, or you're weaving in the phrases because they make sense. So maybe you have in your resume in a collaborative environment, maybe it says on the job description, through teamwork collaboratively.
Okay.
Doesn't that sort of mean the same thing?
Okay.
Why can't you use their words rather than your words if it means the same thing? They're synonyms, so to speak. Synonym
Yes.
phrases,
Yes.
right?
Okay.
So the idea is you want that matchy. All right. So here are some ways to optimize your resume. I have like 19 tips here. So you want to target your headline. You know how at the top of a lot of resumes, it says summary profile? I'm telling you, friends, don't do that. That is a wasted line. Tell people you're in HR, you're in finance, you're in accounting, you're in marketing, you're in IT. Tell them what you want to be when you grow up. Do you have the word profile summary as your LinkedIn headline? No, you don't. You have all your key titles and keywords. So just follow that rule and customize the top line or lines of your resume to get them focused on what this resume is about. Now, your value proposition, that little paragraph under the profile summary, or if you want to call that profile summary paragraph, value proposition or positioning statement, whatever you want to call it, it should be written in first person implied I. So you don't want to say, I was a, you don't use pronouns on a resume. However, if you are going to do something in LinkedIn, you do want it to be more first person. However, I don't like starting any sentences with the word I, because it's not about you. It's about the value you bring, the pain points you can resolve, the problems you can solve for that employer. So they're looking to hire you with your expertise for some particular reason. So you need to make your LinkedIn profile friendly first person, because it's your profile. It's not a bio. It's not a third person bio. It's your personal profile. So you need to tweak the verbiage so it's, first person implied I on the resume and more first person in the LinkedIn, but I wouldn't start the sentence with I. If anything, you say currently, comma, I.
So what would you use instead of I? If you are Java, like what would you use? Can you give an example?
Okay, so in LinkedIn, I believe the first part of the about section should be the title you're going for.
Mm-hmm.
So employment law attorney.
Mm-hmm.
With extensive expertise. You don't want to say 23 years, 37 years, 14 years, if you are more mature, because then you might get into that ageism, age discrimination thing. So you just use the word extensive experience. Same thing on a resume. You want to focus that you are seasoned, you're mature, you're qualified, but you don't need to give away the cards about, how many years of experience. All right. So any questions about this first little tip?
I had asked it along the way, so you're good to go.
All right. Now, here's the resume style that I use. I like using a shaded band on the resume rather than all black and white, but I believe in having two resumes. So let me explain that now. I believe you need a pretty resume for human beings. So that's the shaded blue bands. And then you need a deconstructed, no formatted resume for the bots for online applications. So you basically have to keep two resumes in tandem with one another when you are customizing the resumes. So I use the shaded blue bands based upon research that I came up with. You've probably all heard of the Ladders, which is a senior executive platform for job seekers. And they did a study and they had recruiters look at a plain black and white resume, and they had them look at a resume that had these shaded bands on them. Well, let me click on, whoops, sorry about that. Let me go back. Here's the article. It was in Business Insider. And it says what recruiters look at during the 6 seconds they spend on your resume. So here's the visual. It's coming up. Oops, it must be here. I just got to wait for it to populate. There we go. So you might have seen this before, but maybe you never had an explanation. So the left resume is a black and white resume, and you can see the heat maps of where the recruiter's eyes went. It goes about 2/3 of the way down versus the one with the shaded bands. Look at that. The recruiter's eyes went from top to bottom. That's where the heat maps are. So this is where they're looking and scanning in this 6 seconds with human eyes. So that's why, I write resume. I only have one style of resume that I write, and it's the shaded blue bands. So why blue? Well, let me click on blue. There's a site called colorpsychology.org. And the reason I chose blue is because blue has more positive connotations than negative. But you can look at all these other different colors and see what they mean. But I at least wanted to show you there are these live links that are built into this deck. Now, you can see on the top of my resume that I'm saying what it is that I want to be when I grow up. Like, this is the type of position that I'm looking for. Then I have, you know, the profile summary information, you know, in my resume. Now I'm writing a different style resume for myself than I would for clients. The reason being is I'm not really looking for a job right now. But you can see that I have core competencies. In other words, skills, in other words, keywords. And if you notice, they're all in alphabetical order. So some people say, oh, but I want to put my skill that I'm best at the top. Well, to me, that's not a sense of logic. I think it's better that you put things in alphabetical order, because people will pick up that this list is in alphabetical order. And if you present this logically, the hiring manager is going to look at your resume and say, oh, they've got this and this and this and this. What they're doing is nonlinear reading. Their eyes are jotting around and they're making notations in their head as to what their must-haves are. And then once they determine that you have those must-haves, they're going to take a more careful look at that resume, and they're saying, oh, and they also have this and this and this. Like, this is good. All right, well, now let's take a look. So the next section I do is called career highlights. And then I take my sweet spots and I bold them. And then I write, you know, not a sentence, but a bullet point that explains a little bit more about my accomplishments in those sweet spots. Now I have corporate for-profit experience as well as nonprofit experience. So I actually somehow or another magically weave those in together into those bolded sweet spot bullet points. So the career highlights is actually like the hybrid part of a chronological resume. And then I do the rest, you know, chronological.
Lynn, we have a question in the chat box.
Yep.
ATS can also read the blue banded resume, yes?
No.
Ew.
So some of them may be able to, but typically that's why I say you have to have two resumes. You have the pretty blue band shaded resume for human eyes, and then you have the deconstructed resume for the bots, because the deconstructed resume, just plain black and white, it should be all in Arial 12-point font. When you see the word upload, that's when you know there's probably an ATS system, and you upload the deconstructed resume and it's formatted slightly differently. We're going to get to that. That's in an upcoming slide. And then your other resume, your pretty resume, should match it when you've customized it. Why?
That includes
Because
underlining then? I mean, I see the shading, you address that, but the underlining is the same thing? Like,
yes.
keep that out?
Yeah.
Thank you.
No underlining. I don't do bold. I don't do italics. Nothing. Just Arial 12-point font, end of story, no columns, no tables,
Awesome.
no none of that stuff. And
Thank
the
you.
reason being is you just want the bots to read the information and plunk it into the database. Now, at the end of the online application, it might ask you, do you want to upload, or sorry, do you want to attach a resume? Yes, please. Now I want to attach the pretty blue resume. Okay. So let me keep going.
Sorry. Thank you.
Now, you know, other things, you don't want to have any images, no graphics, no logos, no pictures, none of that on a resume, right? But if you have a one-pager, networking page, handbill, whatever you want to call it, there's different names for it. But this is something that I would use for networking meetings. I used to print these out by, you know, gobs and gobs if when I went to an in-person meeting, but now you could send these one pagers off to a chapter leader of a networking meeting in a job club type of thing, and they can pull it up on screen, and then you could give your pitch using this one pager for networking. So you could see it's not a resume, it is a one pager that says a summary of what you do, who you are, who you've worked for, what your educational background is, but it has target companies on it. So if you see down in the bottom right-hand corner, my targets say higher ed career services. Well, once I finish my doctoral dissertation, you know, my goal is to do something in higher ed, whether it's career services or teach an adjunct course or something like that. That's what I want to be when I grow up, so to speak, is something to do with higher ed.
Is this a place when you get to the end of an application and it says attach a resume, can you also attach this one pager? Maybe, you know, your cover letter, your resume, and whatever, I don't know.
No, the one pager is meant for networking with other job seekers. The one pager has target companies on, so you never want the company you're applying to see their competitors' names or not their name on your one pager. Okay, the one pager is only for networking purposes, never to be used in place of or attached for a resume. And it's
we do have a question in the chat box too.
Yep.
Kind of going back, maybe it's on the slide, it's kind of small, but you have a list of core competencies and they're like everything in the kitchen sink. Can you put those in the bullets, or is it not recommended, or twice, or how does that work?
Every career coach has their different style and their opinion.
Okay.
I do what I do, and I know that I've had clients land between a week to a month to 2 months, but they're out there networking. There are other people who may be doing elder care and doing spotty job search. And even though they've had their LinkedIn profile and their resume done, they're not out there networking and they're not applying to jobs. You know, if you are working a full-time job, you're working 40 hours. Well, what I've heard on the street is that you should be job searching 35 hours and then spend 5 hours doing self-care, going out and exercising. Okay, so being in job search is a full-time job. And that does include networking and learning, like here you are today, learning, right? So that actually is part of the job search.
Absolutely.
But you need to be spending at least 35 hours a week on the job search so that you learn tips and tricks that will help you. But you've got to be networking also in just, you know, networking groups or in groups where you can learn and network at the same time. So if you develop this one pager, you can share it with other people. So you never want to say, particularly in industry, you want to be very specific. So you can see higher ed career services. I have Penn State, Great Valley. Why? Because that's the closest to me. Gwynedd Mercy, that's where I'm earning my doctoral dissertation. Temple, Westchester, or Sinus. So I'm being very specific because if I did have to drive in person, you know, at one point in time when I decide I want to do an in-person thing, then I can at least reach it. You know, I wouldn't put, you know, University of Wyoming because I can't get there in an hour or two.
No.
So yeah.
Even on a plane, yes.
Yeah. All right.
Is there I'm sorry, is there a specific font? I mean,
that's what we're talking about right now.
Sorry, go ahead.
So fonts do matter. You know, if you're using Times New Roman on your resume, that's a little bit, you know, I worry about you dating yourself. That's more the ageism, age discrimination. I use Calibri on the pretty resume, but on the deconstructed resume, you want to use Arial 12-point font. Now, when I did this research years ago, I can't even begin to tell you how many articles, which is what I synthesized and put together here today. And on pretty much every article that I read, Ariel was mentioned as the best, non-sensory or sensory, sensory, non-sensory font to use for the applicant tracking system.
I've heard
So that's why, oops, Ariel, oh my goodness, I have just gone nuts here. Yeah, with my mouse. So I would recommend just Arial, but no less than 11-point font. But I typically take a resume, and when I deconstruct it from the pretty blue, and honestly takes me about 12 to 15 minutes. It's pretty quick. So I just turn everything into Arial 12-point font, and that's what is used to upload versus attach. The next thing is, we've already discussed this, don't hide your words in white and put it in 1-point font, the whole job description at the end of your resume, because it does come out in black at the other end. So just like you can, change Merry Christmas to red, green, or Happy Hanukkah to, blue and gray, to make it look, a different color, you could take that whole job description and make it white, but it does come out as black on the other end. Don't do that. I just think it just doesn't show integrity. Now, some people have had to take bridge jobs, or, you got to eat, you got to pay the mortgage, you got kids' college payments. There's all kinds of reasons, you got a car payment, you got to do what you got to do. And some people are taking underemployment jobs because they got to live, they got to survive. But that's maybe not something totally you want to put on your resume, that you were an Uber driver, a Lyft driver, you had to wash dishes in the kitchen, because that's not your normal mojo. If it's your normal mojo, then great. But if it's not, then you need to just, not put those irrelevant positions on your resume. Now, when you're asked in a job application, you do need to be honest about who you work for. But on a resume, it's just a document. It's a marketing document that's going to try to get you the interview. So, when in the interview, oh, well, what have you been doing during your job search in this past, 18 months? Washing my hands, right? So maybe that's a appropriate answer, but maybe I think that one's sort of gone by the wayside now. So I've been just working a part-time job just to make extra income, and I've been taking online courses to keep learning, because I'm a continuous lifelong learner. So if you weave in hey, I still got to eat, but I've been taking advantage of also continuing my learning, then that is also like a good balance to explain why you've taken an underemployment type of job. So you don't want to lie, but you don't have to put that information on your resume, because the resume is just a recap.
We have a question in the chat box, and on that exact subject, what if the underemployment position lasted as long as 5 years, like before COVID? How do you handle that?
Well, obviously that would be a choice that you've accepted it for that long, but that's an individualized thing, and everybody has their reasons. They have to do what they have to do. You may have children, you may have an elder care situation. There are gaps that may happen in your life, and it may be more than COVID, and you've had to do what you had to do. I totally get that. So there's something you can always put on your resume or on your LinkedIn profile. The word is sabbatical, elder care sabbatical, education sabbatical, family sabbatical, personal sabbatical. Yes. So if you go to my nonprofit website, greatcareersphl.org, and if you type in the word gap, you will see the article, and it gives those exact examples of different types of sabbaticals. So this helps fill in that gap so that people can see why you've had that gap, perhaps for so long. And it will help them formulate a question when you do get to the interview, or it may cause them to want to interview you because now they see, oh, you're not a total loser because you haven't worked for 5 years or 6 years. You had a reason, right? And you explained the reason. So I think it just helps being proactive by filling in those gaps. And I just love the word sabbatical.
Will the bot or the ATS kick you out because there's some kind of gap, or is sabbatical a placeholder showing dates so you be good to go?
I think it's a placeholder that shows dates, but I don't know what I don't know. I don't work for any of the ATSs, and there's over 200 of them. So I can only, think logically and make a guesstimate that it will fill in that gap situation. All right. Now, you want to be aware of special characters. I only use solid black bullets. From the research that I have found, those were appropriate. So I don't want to use arrows. I don't want to use check marks and all that kind of stuff. You don't want to put tables. You don't want to put columns in. You don't want to borders, lines going across the page, borders going around. You don't want to put all that formatting in your applicant tracking system resume. And that's why the only thing that I do in the pretty resume is the shaded blue blanks. So if you think about it, let's talk about a PowerPoint. Mine are a little bit different, but mine's not a PowerPoint anyway. It's a Google slide deck. So you probably heard when you're presenting, you're going to tell them what you're going to tell them, you're going to tell them, and you're going to tell them what you just told them. You can't do that on a resume and LinkedIn profile. You can only do the first two parts. You're going to tell them what you're going to tell them, and you're going to tell them. You're going to tell them what you're going to tell them, you're going to tell them, et cetera, rinse and repeat. So just like LinkedIn, it has the header, the section, and then you put your content in the section. You go to the next section, you put your content in the section. Resume is the same way. So you want to be able to have a standardized section where you're going to put information in, and hopefully those are your accomplishments that are quantifiable. Percentages, dollars, increase, decrease, supervised 88 people over 4 continents, whatever it may be, numbers speak volumes. So again, if you go to the greatcareersphl.org website, and in the top right, you can put in the word accomplishments, and there are a variety of different ways. You might have heard of STAR, but they're STAR, SOAR, PAR, CAR, parade. So in those little acronyms, it explains it a little bit more in the article that I wrote. So check that out, but you definitely want to have quantifiable accomplishments if at all possible. But when you're putting those accomplishments in on your resume, even in LinkedIn, I believe standard solid black bullet points are the safest.
So when we're talking about higher ed, and there's different kinds of resumes for different industries. So there's a federal resume style, there's a corporate resume style, there is higher ed resume style, and
that's a really good point.
Of curriculum vitae, and sometimes you would include publications, sometimes you wouldn't, and depending on where you're going. When you're going for a higher ed type position that doesn't include a professorship, maybe it's in administrative or whatever, do you include stuff like that on a resume?
Okay.
Or is it LinkedIn open enough, or how does that work?
Yeah, so there are different strokes for different folks, and you have to individualize based upon your particular situation. So I have done work for a lot of PhDs who are also sort of along the lines of academics, like for a university. They've got publications, they've got patents. Well, that is more of a CV, curriculum vitae, and that does not really totally align with LinkedIn per se. That's why LinkedIn has the patent and the publication section. So if you are applying to a university, if you are looking for a professorship, I bet you dimes to donuts on that university website, it wants a very specific format of how you are to submit your resume. And I'll give you an example. I know that Drexel University has a very specific way they want people who are going to be professors to submit their resume. So this format is not going to totally work. You have to put things, that the headers, in different sections, and you have to follow their requested format. Now, if somebody is doing an administrative position or an IT position, they don't need that same format for a resume because they're not doing a CV with the publications and whatnot on it.
Gotcha.
So they can use more corporate resume, you know, in this style of format. If you are brand new, fresh out of college, your professors in school would typically tell you to put education at the top. They want you to toot your horn about where you graduated from. But once you get that diploma and walk across the stage, it's more typical in the corporate world to move the education down to the bottom.
Absolutely.
But, you know, freshers out of college, they don't necessarily know this. And it's okay. You know, they're looking for an entry-level job. They're just looking to get started in their career. So, you know, if people are hiring for entry-level jobs, then, you know, yes, you know, people will know, okay, that's what your college told you to do. That's fine. So as I say, there's different circumstances for everything.
Okay.
And everything has to be treated individually. But this particular example that I have on the screen right now, I went to my local unemployment office back in 2013, and they had a resume workshop, and they had somebody that had a binder, and you could like flip through the binder and the plastic sheet protectors, and you could choose any one of these formats. And because they were paid by federal funds, you gave them the resume, and their resume writer copied and pasted things and plunked it into the format that was your first choice.
By the way, that's not me.
No, it was in Pennsylvania. It was in Pennsylvania.
No, I'm not a state worker. I'm the county worker, and we don't have that. So
okay. So this is the resume that I picked out. Well, guess what? This got me an interview with somebody that I emailed it to. And I got through 2 interviews for, at the time, it was the 25th largest, fastest growing IT company in the world, according to Forbes, or, you know, whatever the magazine was, I forget. So I did get the interview based upon this resume because I was going for an executive administrative assistant position for the CMO. And they thought, oh, well, this is cool, blue shaded, the way, you know, it was just a different looking resume. But let me tell you, 7.5 months, I took this resume and I submitted it online, and I got 0 interviews. And it's because the bots couldn't read it. Do you see the top part? That has my contact information in it. That was put in a header, and the header has a section break. And then you've got other sections, you got shading, you got columns. It couldn't read it. It couldn't read it at all. So I spent so much wasted time, energy, and effort submitting this doggone resume, and I got zippo out of it. I wasted so much time and ink and paper. So just don't do this. Don't go with highly formatted resumes. Now, if you're a graphic designer, you know, sure, you want to have a cool resume, but maybe you're submitting it via email.
Yes.
That's great. You can have a cool looking resume showing off your graphic design skills.
Yes.
If you're doing email, but you certainly don't want to do that with an applicant tracking system if you're applying as a corporate graphic designer.
Hence,
you know,
2 resumes. You got it. Perfect.
Yeah, you got to do different things. Okay. Now, when I first gave this presentation, it was January of 2014. I had somebody from Romania who's from Delaware, but she worked for a whole bunch of Romanian companies. And so she had a lot of Romanian terms in her resume, and her jaw dropped down to her knees pretty much. And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm using the Romanian spelling for certain things, anglicized, and maybe this is why I'm having problems getting through the applicant tracking system. So she had to go back and change the spelling. Now, I married a Canadian. My girls are dual citizens. I have friends in Australia, I have friends in England, etc. So we spell color differently. We spell organization differently. You know, there's a U in it for color versus a Z versus an A in organization. So if you are in America, you need to spell the American way that we spell color and organization. But if you are
applying to an American company, yes.
But if you are in England and you're in America, you need to spell color and organization their way when you're applying. So, you know, when in Rome, do as the Romans. When in whatever country, do as that, you know, country. So that's the bottom line on that. Next thing is, make sure your contact information is at the top of the page, and including your phone number and your email, not in the header or the footer. And the reason being is, when you submit to an applicant tracking system, it is a database, and there are certain order of the way things have to go for the bots to read it and plunk it in the right spots. So, you know, you have to standardize, you know, how you submit when you see that word upload. Now, I have a note here to check your spam folder. So I have a little personal story. My daughter is a video editor. That was her major in college. And I was selling a protein shake thing once upon a time, and there was a contest. And in the contest, it said, have one of your clients submit a video and you could win a trip to California and $5,000 and a whole bunch of swag. Well, guess what? My video editor daughter, who was in her 20s at the time, she made a really awesome video. We submitted it. Then they asked me as the distributor to verify that she was my client. That went into my spam folder, and I missed the deadline. And I had a 20-something-year-old in tears because she was a finalist, but we never got to that portion. So let's turn the story into a job seeker. If you are a job seeker and you are perfect for a job, and maybe it's a really big company, and there's only so many humans in the human resources department, and if that automated reply comes back and says, hey, you're a good match for this job, the next step would be for you to fill out this next form and then click here to schedule an appointment on a calendar. If that was in your spam folder and you missed that and that opportunity for the job, you'd kick yourself. So I'm telling you, check your spam folder every once in a while, you know, maybe weekly, you know, make it a Saturday thing.
Even if you have some kind of spam blocker or an announcement that you received this stuff, do you really want it? Check your junk and your spam folder anyway, because something might have gotten through to that folder. Like me yesterday, I had 114 sitting in there. I had no idea. So yeah, you just never know. It's definitely better to check it and have nothing there.
So,
yes,
you know, at my nonprofit, we have Salesforce for nonprofits, and we have another little system that goes through for an app that we use. And in our auto replies for each of our events, doggone it, 9 times out of 10, it goes to the spammer promo folder. And then people get frustrated because they don't know where to look for that, because they haven't whitelisted us yet or trained, you know, their spam that it's okay to receive these emails. So
I have
go
quick
ahead.
comment on the whole thing. I mean, even not in your spam folder, it can get lost in your regular folder.
Oh,
they say
yeah.
keep a separate job search folder, which I do, but because of auto replies and everything, although auto replies every time I sign up for a meeting, the announcements from every group on their meetings when I sign up through Meetup, I get 50 or 100 messages a day that I can't keep up with.
Mhm.
And I'm worried. And I was thinking about it last night. I'm waiting for a company to get back to me. I'm like, oh, an odd name could get buried in that. Luckily, I was just looking for a link for a workshop and I did get a response only because that's like right next to something I was looking for. But so
Yeah,
easy for messages to get lost with so
easy.
many messages.
So
I-
I'm on LinkedIn ProFinder to be notified for people who want, resumes written. I'm getting hundreds a day, hundreds of emails. I can't even find my client emails anymore because it's just getting buried. There's so many people that want something new and they want to move. It's crazy. So yes, your inbox can get out of control very easily. And then you definitely need to check your spam folder. All right, now you want to check your date of employment and put that on your resume in a very specific format. So this is something you do want to write down. Hopefully you have a pen. When on a resume, you want to have company name, comma, city, comma, 2-character state. You don't want to write out New Jersey. You want NJ. Tab over, you put the date. Underneath, you put the job title. And then underneath that, all your other accomplishments and bullet points and stuff. Now,
Lynn is exactly right, because an ATS will not be able to read it, and
yes,
you won't see any dates or anything unless you do it what she said. So it's very important that you follow along what she's saying.
I'm going to repeat that because it's that important. Company name, comma, city, comma, 2-character state, tab over, and the dates, which I'm going to go into more detail about, and then underneath your job title. Do not put the job title first. Do not, because the ATS wants it in a certain way. And if you want, to do minimal corrections on the other end, you will do it in this way. So I'm going to give you an example. My daughter applied to Del Boomi with my applicant tracking system formatted resume. It read it in a nanosecond. It was the Workday system. That's an ATS system. She had to make a couple corrections. She said, Mom, it took away the comma after the city before the state. I'm like, well, honey, that's okay, because the city is a city and that goes in the field called city. The state is the state and it's a field called state. So really that was a non-issue. Next thing is it put her volunteer experience in her work experience. So she had to go and tweak that and put that in. The next thing is, you know how some people put like a little sentence that explains the company or their job before they put the bullet points? Hers was just straight bullet points. She didn't have that sentence, but this particular Workday system set it up so that the first thing was that sentence. And so she had to put the bullet point back so that it made sense. It was just a bullet point accomplishment, and it was nothing about her overall job or the overall company, that it was a construction company or an IT software company or whatever it may be. Other than that, those are the only corrections that she had to make. When I was applying to jobs back in 2013, and I told you for 7.5 months, I had 0 interviews. And it was because of that doggone resume from my local unemployment office that I thought was so cool. It was very pretty looking, but it didn't get me through any systems. And I was applying constantly. I can't even tell you how many jobs I applied to online. So, I learned my lesson, the hard way. So I'm telling you, don't do what I do. Now, let's talk about the dates. The dates are very important. You see at the bottom of the screen, there is 2 ways of writing a date. You have the year dash year or the year space dash space year. I typically use year space dash space year. I just think it looks nicer formatting wise, visually on a resume. Now, the little dash, if you allow Microsoft to do its thing, it's pretty much going to have that longer dash in it, unless you go after the dash and hit backspace and then type the dash in again. So the difference between the two, one is called an M dash and the other one is called an N dash. So an M dash, an M has 2 humps, whereas an N has 1 humps. So that longer dash is an M dash, the shorter dash is an N dash. Now, this is one of my pet peeves. I could go through anybody's resume and I will be the teacher with the red pen and I will circle all those inconsistencies. I like everything to be an N dash. I just think it looks much nicer and you're paying attention to detail. So if you have somebody in your family or a friend, if you get together to be work search buddies, then review each other's resume with the red pens, and then you'll know what you have to correct, and you got an extra set of eyes looking out for you, right? For spelling, for punctuation, and whatnot.
We do have a few questions in chat, Lynn. Going back to these dates, that's a perfect timing, even though this was kind of a couple of slides back. I've been receiving severance for the past 18 months from my company after a merger. How do I work that into my resume and interviewing now that I'm out looking for a job? Is that going to affect the dates? How do you put that on there that I've been getting a severance?
Well, that affects your unemployment. So you have to fess up. Obviously, you cannot claim that you're unemployed, not receiving any money when you're receiving money, right? Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. But if you stopped working for the company, you're going to have to treat that accordingly on your resume and your LinkedIn profile. So if you don't have a job, it's harder to get a job. So having that job and that severance, you are actually earning money from that company. I would tend to still put that on my resume and my LinkedIn to present, because you are still receiving money from the company. But on the resume or the cover letter or whatever, you could say that, there was a merger and, I physically stopped working for the company, but am receiving severance. Yes. So you want to be honest about your situation. But, you're really not working for the company, but you are as far as unemployment is concerned, and you really kind of are as far as severance is concerned. So I don't know. That's a tricky situation.
I have to interrupt on this one. This is a very personal hotspot for me. I don't know about Pennsylvania, but for New Jersey, make sure, even if you're on severance, check with unemployment, because if you're getting weekly payments in lieu of years there or something, believe it or not, you're still entitled to unemployment, even though you're getting severance. It doesn't affect your unemployment and you still can get it. Unemployment itself says if you're in any doubt, apply.
In Pennsylvania, you can earn up to $175 a week without it affecting your unemployment. When I was on unemployment, I've always had, for the past 27 years, I've always had a side gig. So I just had to show what my taxes or my income was for the previous year. And they adjusted my unemployment because
for New Jersey, it's like that too. If you go back
had a full-time job.
Severance, it doesn't matter the amount of severance. Severance doesn't count towards unemployment in New Jersey.
Unemployment is another whole mixed bag. And we can probably talk about that.
That's not today's
5 hours at least.
Also on your, as far as severance is, check with the company and see when they're going to report your end date. If they report your end date at the end of your severance, that's what you list. If they report it the last physical day, then that's what you list.
Yeah.
Perfect.
But check with the company.
There's always, individualized situations. So, you have to do deep dives on those, but let's just keep going on the date, because I'm not done yet. I'm talking about dates.
Yes, sorry.
on the pretty, and I need to really work on the deck, because I see what the time is. And if we get to too many questions, I won't get through the whole content. But on the pretty resume, I only use years. So 2010 to 2021. On the deconstructed resume, the applicant tracking system, it wants months and years. 06/01 space 09/21. So I normally ask clients to give me the months and the date and the years. And then once I got the deconstructed resume done, then I'll go back to the pretty resume and just change years to years. So that's why you have to have both resumes sort of in tandem from your base resume, and you go file, save as, base resume for this company, file, save as deconstructed resume for the same company. And you have to tweak out the keywords and whatnot, so everything stays in tandem. Again, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. Hopefully that helps. All right, moving on. If the application requires you to file it as a Word document, then it could be a .doc, .docx. I mean, it should tell you whether they want, if either one of those will be accepted. Now, if they tell you to submit a PDF, that's another thing, but make sure it's a readable PDF and not an image. So if I were to take my phone and take a picture of a resume, then that would be an image. If I were to take my resume and put it through the scanner on my printer, that's an image. The only way you're going to have a readable, like an Adobe Reader type resume, is if you go File, Print, Save as PDF. So beware of that when you are trying to submit your resume. Follow whatever instructions that the company gives you in the instructions. Now, it used to be rich text format, but who the heck uses rich text format? I don't know. Okay. How about another quick question?
Actually, there were quite a few questions on this exact slide. So we answered a ton of questions about Word, PDF, what do I do, kind of thing. So you answered it. Yep,
good.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay. Now, again, we talked about uploading and attaching. If you see the word upload at the beginning and it's a big company, that's a pretty good indication that that might be an ATS system. And then you get to the end of the online application, it says, do you want to attach a resume? Yes, and that's when you attach the pretty resume. Now, if it's a small company, a little mom and pop shop, they're not going to have an ATS system. They have no reason, because they're only, every once in a blue moon, they're going to hire somebody. So best guess is that is just, your pretty resume that you're going to attach, and you're probably going to send it by email. So uploading your resume with an ATS system is definitely preferred over copying and pasting into the text boxes. You want, when you push that button, you want the bot to read your resume in a nanosecond. Otherwise, I'm sure there's going to be some people here sitting and saying, oh my God, it's torture, it's painful, it takes me 2 hours to fill out this freaking application online. It shouldn't. If you do not have your resume copy and paste in a nanosecond, that is a really big red flag for you that you do not have the right kind of formatted resume. I'm sorry to deliver the bad message. Don't shoot the messenger, but today is the day where you can begin anew and again, taking these tips and change your resume so that this doesn't happen to you and you don't spend an hour or two applying to these jobs. Oops, I think I missed one. All right. Now, when you upload your resume, you don't want to upload it a bajillion times, because that will hurt rather than help your cause, because it'll look like you don't know technology. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And so multiple submissions are not going to help you get noticed in a good way. It's bad. It's like, oh, are you really stupid? You don't know how to read and use technology, right? And then, but if you are applying to multiple positions at the same company, if you see project manager, requisition 1, project manager, requisition 2, project manager, requisition 3, that's a whole different deal. Because that could be the same hiring manager who has 3 open spots. One could be Midwest, one could be Southeast, one could be West Coast, right? Or it could be 3 different hiring managers. You never know. Totally different scenario versus the same job doing it 10 times, right? But you can also tweak or tailor your resume to the job. So if project manager 1 has, you know, an extra 2 requirements that are different from the project manager 2, if you have those skills, then you need to write your accomplishments that address that particular skill to let them know, hey, I'm bringing the goods to the table here. I can do that. So you can tweak the content as long as you can back it up with the skills and endorsements that you have.
So would that go for, I mean, you have uploading, maybe you only can upload 1 resume and 1 cover letter and 1 reference list or whatever, but then you can also attach. So you pick 1 project manager, 1 resume, and then you can attach 2 and 3? Is that what?
Well, when you customize a resume, it'll be, you know, project manager 1 resume, then you have project manager 2 resume, project manager. Your past history is not going to change.
Right. Your
past history is your past history. It's the other part, like the about section, or your profile summary statement. You could tweak the verbiage in that addresses that particular skill set that they're looking for in one job description versus another.
Okay. All right.
That makes sense?
Yes. Thank you.
All right. And when you are optimizing your resume, you know, you want to carve out your expertise. You know, a generalist is a dime a dozen. If I put administrative assistant down, you know, that doesn't pay me very much money and that doesn't differentiate me. But when I put down executive assistant, you know, or executive assistant who is bilingual, you know, that differentiates me from some of my potential competition for the job, because now I'm saying, hey, I'm in the C-suite. I've got, you know, CMOs, CEOs, whatever, CXOs that I've dealt with on an executive level. And so I'm bringing slightly different skills perhaps to the table than being more administrative assistant receptionist, like, you know, the totally different vibe there. So you have to differentiate your way in some way, shape, or form for whatever your line of industry is. So remember these 3 words: riches in niches. I learned that from my Penn State Great Valley professor when I took a content marketing analytics certificate. He said those 3 words and I'm like, wow, those really resonate with me. So thinking about positioning yourself, you want to use keywords where you're found for the general terms, but you also want to use keywords that are very niche because you come to the table with certain background and experience that maybe your competition doesn't have. And that's maybe the secret sauce that distinguishes you that might sell. All right. Speaking of riches and niches, that is one of my favorite quotes. And this is from way back in the day from our Instagram account. All right. Now you want to have normal resume sections. If you think about LinkedIn as the gold standard, okay, they call it skills and endorsements. I just change it up a little bit on the pretty resume and I call it core competencies. But on the applicant tracking system resume, I do call it skills. And that whole part at the top moves to the very bottom. The skills go to the very bottom of an applicant tracking system resume. And you don't want to call them core competencies, you want to call them skills. So let's think about an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. if you were to fold that piece of paper in half, if you think about a newspaper, you fold it in half. That's the top of the fold. What's going to sell that newspaper? The headline. So the headline is just like your headline on LinkedIn or resume. That's what's going to sell. You're telling people who you are, what you do, not up a profile summary. That's what I want to be when I grow up, a profile summary. Yeah, right. So that doesn't work. It doesn't tell people what you are. Then you tell them your positioning statement, your value proposition, whatever you want to call it. And then you go into the core competencies. And if you have them in alphabetical order, you've just made it very easy, logical for them to sort out if you've got the skills that they're looking for. Then again, I do career highlights. So I want to put those accomplishments right up front before I get into my whole section of professional experience. So there are synonyms that are acceptable, like professional experience or work experience. You could have awards and honors or honors and awards. I think they're kind of interchangeable. But when you get into publications, that's more of a CV kind of thing rather than a resume kind of thing, or it should be a separate attachment. You also want to not list your job descriptions. You want to list your accomplishments. And you don't want to put the same verb. You want to make it like differentiated for the reader to make it a little bit more interesting. So you don't say manage, managed, oversaw, led, streamlined, initiated, developed, whatever it may be. Like change it up so that it is different. And there's a list of over 300 verbs on that link right there. And maybe that'll help you change it up a little bit to make your writing more interesting.
Get out your thesaurus, everyone.
Yeah. So you also want to customize the language in your resume, your customized resume from the job description. So again, if you could take out little bits of phrases and plunk it in and wordsmith into your resume before you submit it. And if they use buzzwords, then you just echo it back and use those buzzwords. So that helps with that contextualization and mathematical scores. So you definitely want to analyze keywords from the job description. I've written 4 articles about keywords and different ways to do it. And I am going to do a live demo. So that's why I want to keep moving along because I'm looking at the time here. Now, a couple text analyzers, jobscan.co is terrific, but it's not the be all end all. But some people don't have the money for that, right? They give you like 5 free trials and then they want to charge you. So I use wordart.com for my client work. Why? Because it's free. I like free. Christine likes free, right? So I'm gonna do a demo on that for you. But here's some other keyword analyzers, text analyzers, and this is not a comprehensive end of list. There's plenty more that are out there. But if you had a job, this was from Monster for marketing director. Here's an experiment I think you should do. I want you to print out a job description that you want to apply to. I want you to take your highlighter and I want you to highlight all the keywords. Remember when you were in college, you could actually highlight your own textbooks because you own them, okay? So you're going to do the same thing to study for your midterm or your final. You're going to highlight all the keywords and then you can go back and you can, pen or pencil and annotate in some way, saying, circling like, yeah, this is a keyword. This is something I really want to use. Versus taking this job description and breaking it down. You see 5 distinct paragraphs. Put those in wordart.com and analyze each of the paragraphs for keywords. Then take your start time and your end time for the manual. Then you do it for the 5 different paragraphs broken down. And then the third experiment is take this whole job description, put it into WordArt and analyze it. What's your start time and your end time? Now, I want you to compare the results from your manual versus the 5 paragraphs versus the 1 time and see if it makes a difference in the keyword analysis. The bad thing about WordArt is it does not put 2 words together like project manager, project management, higher education. It'll do higher and then education, project and then manager, or project and management. So it's not a perfect system, but when it's free, that's a good thing, because at least it gives you some indication. So I would do that experiment with just one job, and you might learn something about yourself and your ability, to pick out keywords, because you'd have to, look at keywords anyway. So I used to use Wordle.net to make a word cloud, but I don't use that one anymore. I used to use TagCrowd. I don't use that one anymore. What I do use is WordArt. And why? Is it gives me an exact quantity of the words when it analyzes the job description. And again, this is what I'm going to show you live in a quick demo. So you can also create a LinkedIn banner with the word cloud in WordArt. And I made this for a client who happens to be in New Jersey, by the way. And she was wearing something black and gold, and her hair was blue. So this actually perfectly matched with the brand of what she was wearing. All right. Now, JobScan, this is an old screenshot, but JobScan, if you do use it, you're going to put your resume on one side, you put the job description on another, it'll analyze it and tell you how many skills are matched, how many are found, and which ones are missing. So therefore, you've got to weave in and wordsmith those words into your resume. So that's why it is a good little tool. But again, they're telling you 80% match and above. But at the beginning of this presentation, I told you that an HR person might put parameters on the ATS system, and 80% may not fly, 90% may not fly, 95% may not fly, right? Depends on how many applicants they get for a job. Right now, it seems like it's kind of an employees market. So people, I think, are desperate to find people. All right, couple more tips. I already told you need to have 2 resumes, a pretty resume formatted and a deconstructed resume, Arial 12-point font, whoops. And then, so here is the pretty resume, the beginning part, and here's what the deconstructed resume looks like, the beginning part. So you can see, it's just my name, my phone number, my email, etc., my title, and then the core competencies. Those go at the end, and I call it skills. So let me go back. All right. And now let me go forward, just so you can see just the beginning part. I'm not showing you the whole resume. Now, you also want to put your social media handles in. So my birthday is next week. I'm going to have another cake with more candles, and each candle, we're going to have more fires, right? But that's a good thing. I'm happy, happy to have a birthday. But because I am a boomer, I do want to show that I am good with tech, and that I'm trying to stay current in social media. So, if you can put your Twitter handle on, if you're on Twitter, at least customize your LinkedIn URL, at least do that. All right. There was an article I wrote in 2014 for the Association of Talent Development, ATD, and apparently this got a lot of comments and shares and whatnot worldwide, that they came back to me 2 years later and they said, Lynn, would you write a chapter in a book? There are 15 other career coaches that are writing chapters in this book. So my chapter started out with the applicant tracking system, and then it led to being called Applying for Jobs. So Dick Bolles, the author of What Color's Your Parachute, before he passed away in 2017, he actually wrote the foreword in this book, but there are 16 career coaches who contributed to this book. Now, I will do a WordArt demo here. I know I've only got a few minutes left. It used to be called Taggle, and instructions on how to make a word cloud banner with WordArt is in that little link at the bottom that says blog. And then I'm going to show you a couple things about how to look up keywords. And then I wanted to let you know what my upcoming speaking schedule is. So if you know somebody that should see this particular workshop, Beating the Applicant Tracking System, I'm actually doing it tomorrow at the New York Public Library, and I'm doing it in the evening on November 8th for the Free Library of Philadelphia And then I've got a couple other things going.
And you
Also,
will receive the link to this presentation because we are recording it. So you'll be able to play it back again in case you did miss something. And I will send you the slides that Lynn has created. So all those links that she mentioned, you have access to them, and you can click on the link to get some more information and dig a little bit deeper.
And every third Saturday of the month, I teach a 3-hour LinkedIn workshop. It's actually over 3 months. It's 9 hours worth of free LinkedIn training. This is my 9th year. I'm in my 9th year doing this with the library. It's crazy. So now we're doing it by Zoom, so lots more people are able to come in. Here's also my other contact information and more, and that's it. So let me do these demos before we run out of time here. So I'm going to get out of this article. I'm going to get out of color psychology. And so here is the Great Careers PHL website. So if you put in word art, for example, okay, you will just push the little button and then the article will pop up. And whoops, word cloud, my bad. Word cloud. So when I go over this demo real quick, I just want you to know, you're going to be like, oh my God, how did she do that? So here's the instructions. They're step-by-step how to make a word cloud in LinkedIn. And then there are 4 articles on keywords. There's the accomplishments, you know, all that stuff is there. All right. Oh, I also want to tell you about really terrific workshop. It's free on Monday at chempharma.net. This is probably one of the best speakers we've ever had at the Great Careers. So I invited him to come to Chem Pharma. Incredible innovation. He's so funny. It was really good. All right. I'm going to first show you how to look up a keyword. So really quick demo here. I'm going to click the jobs tab. And I'm going to put in project manager. And I'm going to put in, tabbing over as soon as it takes it. I'm going to put in Greater Philadelphia, because that's where I am located. So you put in whatever area you want. And you're going to look up how many jobs there are. And that'll be up in the top left-hand corner. So keywords matter, you know, and you have to look up different synonyms. So right now, project manager in Greater Philadelphia is 12,250 jobs. So now if I'm going to change this to project management, you're going to see there's going to be a lot more. We go from 12,254 to 30,974. So if you do project management, if you're a project manager, you definitely want to use the word project management in your LinkedIn profile. But if it says project manager in the job description, you want to be able to change it out. Let me do one more quick example. Budgeting. Let's say budgeting is in the job description. Okay, so that has 10,669. But let's check out budgets. All right, so we go from 10,671 to 13,221. Well, what if I were to change it to budget? Now we go to 13,220. So there's not a big difference today, but it's, oh no, sorry, 18,003. So there is a difference. So on LinkedIn,
I'm sorry, I don't have time for that.
In LinkedIn, on the skills and endorsements, which you're going to keep pretty solid, if budget is the right word for what you do, you want to use the word budget, not budgets or budgeting. But in the job description, if it says budgeting, you need to flip out that keyword and add that ing. Now, let's just take this job description. Here's with IQV and Wayne. One of my clients landed there, so it's funny that that just came up. I'm going to go to wordart.com. And we're just going to do a quick demo just so you can see how these words come up. And then I'll take some questions and then we'll call it a day. So I'm going to hit create with the red button. And again, all these instructions are in that blog article. And then it's thinking about it.
This is all very helpful, Lynn. I don't think that people, especially even me, identify with the capability of what you can do until somebody demonstrates it. And then I'm like, wow. So seeing
All
a
right,
link and
gotta
then
go.
seeing it in use is huge. Thank you.
Absolutely. You got to have a visual.
Mhm.
So I don't care about the company or that they are an EEOC, you know, I basically want the requirements. So I'm going to copy and paste this into WordArt. So up here at the top left, I see the word import, and I'm going to paste it in here. Now, the important thing is remove common words. Yep, I don't need an and the. Remove numbers. I don't need the numbers. But stemming, I want to uncheck stemming because I don't want the root word. I don't want strategic. If it says strategically, I want strategically. So I want exact matchy, not the root words. Okay, so I'm going to click on import words, nanosecond, boom. It's telling me site is used 10 times, budget 10 times, ability. And I bet you any money there might be budgeting or budgets or something like that, or maybe not. So budget is the key word that is in this job description. Now here's another little cool thing. See this little red button, visualize? It's now going to give me a word cloud that shows me exactly what this
Is there a cost to use this site, Lynn?
no, this is free.
Wow.
So I'm going to put the link to the deck. You know, I know you're going to send it out, but I'll put my contact information, and the last link to the deck is in the chat now. But you can see the word site is the one that's most used, and then you've got ability, which is, you know, the next used, and budget. No, sorry, budget is next used. So you see, you get a visual of the numerical part of these words. So just as an FYI, I'm going to do a bigger demo of WordArt in LinkedIn part 3 of 3, which happens to be on the 3rd Saturday of November.
Awesome.
So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. I know I'm 4 minutes over. I apologize, but I'm happy to stay and answer any questions if you have any.
We have 2 questions that we did not get to, and
All right.
I'm not sure if they're still on the call. One of them, should you include anything on the top of page 2 of your resume? For example, one line that includes your name, your email, page 2, anything like that? Or skip it? Does it resume length matter?
That's a really good question. I try very hard to do a 2-page resume. There's some clients, they just have to go 3 because they are senior level and they've got a lot of accomplishments in a lot of companies, even though I only go back 12 to 15 years typically. But if somebody's been working at a company 30 years, you're not going to cut it off in the middle of their journey, right? They might have gone from the mailroom to the CEO position. You never know. So everybody is individual and different. But on page 2 or on page 3, I do put on the pretty resume, name and page 2, name and page 3. But on the deconstructed resume, when you take out the columns and you put that at the end, that may be a 3 or 4 or 5 page resume. It doesn't matter because it's just the bots reading it. So it doesn't have to be formatted pretty, but you don't want to hand anybody a 7 or 8 page resume and say, here, read this. Their eyes are going to glaze over. You
Yes.
need to be able to be concise and summarize who you are and what you do. It's just a marketing tool.
Yes, I agree with Lynn, and that's a job search buddy thing. All right, so we have worked at a company for many, many years, and we've had different positions at the same company. Do you put one long date, or do you put individual dates for every single position? How does that work on a resume?
Oh, that's a really good question. I just dealt with a client finishing up a resume yesterday. So she's worked at a company in New Jersey in 3 different positions. So on a pretty resume, you could put company name, city, comma, state, and the beginning of the first job and to present, because you're still there. Underneath, you put the job title, and then in parentheses, 2020 is when she got that job to present. And then on the next job down after the accomplishments, you put that in bold and italics or whatever. And then you put the next title with the dates in parentheses, and then the accomplishments, and then the final title where she began at the company with the dates in parentheses. However, on the applicant tracking system, you must have 3 separate entries.
Oh gosh, I hope that the person that asked that question is still on the call, because that's a pretty important.
You have to have, yes, company, comma, city, comma, state, date, position, blah, blah, blah. Same thing, rinse, repeat for the next 2 things. You've got to have absolutely separate ones for the ATS. You have to think like a database, because it is a database.
Resume style and how it's set up and where to put dates and names and titles and everything changes every 6 months, let alone year to year. So going by what Lynn is saying and the research she's done and read about different ATS systems and the best formatting and that kind of, I would take her word for it. So definitely pay attention, follow those links, read up on what she has read, but she is that subject matter expert, saving you some time so you don't have to do the research. You can just follow along with what she's saying, which I love.
So I hope we got to everybody's questions. If not, I think you can come at lunchtime tomorrow to the New York Public Library. You can rewatch Christine's video. But if you have more questions that weren't answered, I am doing it again, as I said, the 29th of October and November 8th, but I constantly do this one. I've been doing this one since January 2014. And I tweak and modify it, but because I always learn something new or something changes in technology.
Yeah.
But, feel free to come back and ask questions as you have them. So thank you so much for having me.
Lynn, thank you so much for sharing all this really important information regarding job search and resumes and resume setup, and it's invaluable. So I appreciate your time. And thank you everyone for coming and listening in.
All right. And I don't know, so what I say at the end of my Zoom meetings is, don't forget to save the chat. So click on the 3 little dots in the bottom right of the chat. Click save chat, and when Christine ends the meeting, it should pop up for you, and then you'll have the questions and the contacts and the links and whatnot available to you.
And if you don't have that capability because you're on your phone and can't figure it out, don't worry, I'll send you a copy of the chat too. So all right.
Yeah, it doesn't work on a phone. That's right.
Yeah. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Good luck in your job search, and don't spend too much time working on that resume today. Okay, take breaks. Mental health.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye. See you next time.